Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the AVPN UNDP webinar series. I am Patsy Low, Chief of Staff and Policy Advisor at AVPN, and very warm welcome to everyone to today's webinar, Strengthening the Capability of Governments to Engage Philanthropic Capital During COVID-19. This is the second of a series of 3 webinars organized in partnership with the UNDP. The COVID-19 pandemic has posed major global development challenges affecting the lives of millions of people around the world, with critical implications to not only health, but also social, economic, and even political arenas. The philanthropic response to the pandemic has presented the sector as its best. It is showing up both to help flatten the curve in the short term and to address the inequities the crisis will exacerbate over the long term. What is interesting is not only the scale of philanthropic capital being committed, but also how it is being given at record speed with fewer conditions and in greater collaboration with others. Yet, massive responsibility for leading the response and recovery falls primarily on the shoulders of the public sector, and public sector actors that leverage capital of all forms can harness critical resources to invest in the most effective solutions. Examples of these collaborations have the opportunity to be more widely replicated and adopted for real impact. In this session, we invite speakers from Indonesia, Singapore, and Hong Kong, who will share innovative ways that philanthropic capital has partnered public systems and policy interventions in emergency response and recovery and subsequent rebuilding and resilience measures, and what are some of the critical success factors for such approaches. In this 60-minute session today, we will get to hear individually from each speaker. Kicking this off will be sharing by Ms. Joyce Teo, Deputy CEO at Community Foundation Singapore, on the Sayang Sayang Fund initiative and other efforts in partnering with the public sector agencies during the pandemic. Next, we will have Professor Dr. Bambang Sudibyo, Chairman of the National Zakat Agency of Indonesia, also known as Basnas, who will be sharing about how governments are stepping up to recognize and leverage the potential of Islamic philanthropy to achieve development goals. Last but certainly not the least will be Ms. Jennifer Chen, Chief Executive at the Chen Yat-sen Family Foundation in Hong Kong. She will be talking about their Bridge the Gap initiative and how they have amassed support for the NGO sector during this period in order to ensure that urgent needs in society are being met. After the presentations, we will have a panel discussion followed by a brief audience Q&A segment. This session today will be moderated by Mr. Muhammad Didi Hardiana, Technical Advisor of Development Finance at UNDP Indonesia and lead at the UNDP Innovative Finance Lab. Some brief housekeeping matters today. We will be opening up the Q&A chat box throughout today's session. You are highly encouraged to leave your questions for the speakers there, and the panel will seek to address the questions that are raised. However, we do apologize in advance if the panelists may not be able to address all questions due to the interest of time. Please do note that today's session will be recorded. The recording, as well as any relevant resources from the speakers, will be uploaded on AVPN's website within a week after the webinar, so please do keep your eyes peeled for that. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speakers with a little bit more depth so that we can hear from them very shortly. Ms. Joyce Teo, Deputy CEO of Community Foundation Singapore, has close to 20 years of experience in the local nonprofit sector with an interest in corporate, community investment, and philanthropy work. As Deputy CEO, Joyce oversees the management of philanthropy advisory and grant-making work with donors and nonprofit organizations. Her previous work experience in philanthropy and CSR was with Salesforce.com Foundation, as well as Singapore's National Volunteer and Philanthropy Center. Professor Dr. Bambang Sudibyo is the chairman of Basnas. He had formerly served as the Minister of Finance in 1999 through 2000, and then Minister of National Education from 2004 to 2009. He also served as a member of the People's Consultative Assembly from 2001 to 2004. And Dr. Sudibyo is a professor at Gajah Mada University, President Commissioner of PT Ajishaka Adrawina, and a commissioner of PT-BPRS, Margi Rizki Bahagia. In addition, he also served as a member of President Habibie's Special Advisory Team in 98 to 99 and chaired the Fiscal Decentralization Task Force at the Ministry of Finance from 01 to 04. Dr. Sudibyo has been the chairman of Basnas since 2015, and during this time, Basnas has received several awards both at national and international levels. Currently, he also serves as the Secretary General of the World Zakat Forum. Ms. Jennifer Chen transitioned into the world of philanthropy after almost 2 decades in finance. As the Chief Executive of the Chen Yat-sen Family Foundation and the Director of Philanthropic Engagement at Legacy Advisors, she also is engaged with a Thriving Family Office in Hong Kong, founded by Mr. James Chen. The Chen Yat-sen Family Foundation takes a venture philanthropy approach to education enhancement programs. Jennifer also oversees the Cornerstone Vision initiatives in Mr. Chen's philanthropic and business portfolio, AdLens and Vision for a Nation. In 2020, she founded #BridgeTheGap Hong Kong, an innovative campaign to bring much needed funding to Hong Kong's COVID-19 disrupted NGO sector. She is also senior advisor to several NGOs like Bring Me a Book Hong Kong, Social Impact Partners, and the One Sky Foundation. Now, this is the end of my introduction. I'd like to hand the session time over to Mr. Muhammad Didi to introduce and moderate the rest of the session. Pak Didi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pat Sian. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for all speakers and all participants. We are very happy that all of you can join us in today's webinar. My name is Muhammad Didi Hardiana. I'm the Technical Advisor of Development Finance in UNDP Indonesia. I'm also leading the Innovative Finance Lab, a dynamic country platform that operates as a collaborative space for government, private sectors, and other interested stakeholders to engage and develop solutions for financing the SDGs. UNDP in Indonesia has made innovative finance as a central part of our work with the objective to unlock and leverage new resources flows for sustainable development. Through the lab, we are designing and testing innovative financing instruments, helping to enhance investments for higher SDGs return and contributing to a stronger enabling environment for SDGs-friendly finance. We have growing portfolio on Islamic finance, green finance, blended finance, impact investing, among others. And if I may highlight, UNDP also enjoying a fruitful collaboration with Basnas on leveraging Zakat for SDGs. So I'm very pleased to be here this morning. As Pat Sian said, this is the second webinar of AVPN UNDP partnership on COVID-19 response and recovery. In the first series a few weeks back, we discussed about innovative financing solutions for social protection. And today we are going to talk more about how the role of philanthropy in addressing the urgent needs of vulnerable communities created by the crisis. As we all know, the COVID-19 pandemic is a human tragedy, not just a global health crisis, but also social and economic crisis, and is having a significant impact across the globe, shrinking economic growth rates, and also pushing a range of countries into a recession. In response to this crisis, philanthropic giving has played a major role through various iterations and structure, including the creation of funds, crowdfunding, individual contribution of all scales, in new initiatives from foundation, and many more. Philanthropic actions also show its advantage in terms of speed, scale, and collaboration. And we also seeing how religious finance, including Islamic finance, has been leveraged to help the vulnerable people during the crisis. So today, together with us, we already have 3 excellent speakers from different backgrounds and countries who will guide us through their experience and best practices on innovative ways to leverage philanthropic capital, building partnership with stakeholders, including government, and share their perspective on the critical factors for success. So I would like to hand over the screen to Ms. Joyce Teo, Deputy CEO of Community Foundation Singapore. The foundation brings people and organizations together to build and strengthen communities. And in response to COVID-19, they have launched an interesting and impactful initiative. So Joyce, can you tell us more about this? And perhaps you can also highlight the partnership with government and other partners to extend the impact. Over to you, Joyce.
Hi everyone. Thanks, Pak Didi, for the introduction. So my presentation would just cover three key points. Very much a quick sharing of what Community Foundation of Singapore is about, and also the Sayang Sayang Fund, and also to just share just some reflections on the opportunities as well as challenges that we see in addressing the COVID-19 pandemic, and also our efforts in partnership with our community partners as well as with the government. So very quickly, as a community foundation in Singapore, we focus to inspire philanthropy by lowering barriers of entries for donors in the form of setting up donors advice funds. So we support our donors in their giving journey by matching their interests to charitable causes. And also we have a very good network of charity partners on the ground so that we could understand community needs. And that's how we engender the giving process between our donors as well as the community. Just a very quick snapshot. So CFS currently has more than 150 funds. We work with more than 400 charities, and to date, we have close to 160 million in donations, and the grant making is really at 90 million. The next slide, please. So very quickly about the Sayang Sayang Fund. So the Sayang Sayang Fund is set up with a colloquial name. So Sayang Sayang is actually a Malay word, but it's also known as Singlish, with the idea of taking care or feeling loved in a certain way. So when COVID-19 hits our shores in February, the virus was relatively unknown then, and it breeds some fear in the community, which manifests in the stigmatization of frontline healthcare workers who was looking towards caring for people who are affected by the virus. So we started Sayang Sayang Fund really initially as an opportunity to provide an alternative voice and to advocate for the well-being and appreciation of these workers. And because we have the ability to collate funds together and convene partners, it grew to a movement. And as the situation worsened over time, we adapted the Sayang Sayang Fund to address urgent and community needs in the community. So in March, we started another round of fundraising and leveraging on our assets in terms of the partners that we have, as well as the various work that we know. We sort of adapted the Sayang Sayang Fund to really look towards as a response fund to convene donors and partners together so that we could support those who are very much affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. So the way we do it is we provided emergency response funds so that we could help address immediate and short-term relief for those who are affected. We also look towards working with our partners to provide funding to aid in innovative solutions or research to address then the emergency needs to combat the situation. And last but not least, we wanted to provide capabilities to our charitable partners and enterprises so that they could continue to deliver essential service to those who are affected by the pandemic. So I also like to mention at this point that apart from the Sayang Sayang Fund, there were also other philanthropic-based and community funds set up. For example, the Maturity Trust, with the support of Singapore-based family foundations and philanthropists, actually launched the Singapore Strong Fund, and the National Council of Social Service also relaunched the Courage Fund and the Invictus Fund. And these are probably the four most active funds in the community then during this period when we wanted to address the pandemic. Can I have the next slide, please? So just a quick snapshot of what the Sayang Sayang Fund has done over the past 8 months. So in the 3 months that we were launched, the Sayang Sayang Fund actually gathered up more than 5 million from donors from all walks of life. So over time, as we work with various charities and partners, we actually developed 9 initiatives covering a spectrum of needs. And these were evolved as we see emerging needs coming out from the community from different sectors. And because with the charities were very much caught unaware when the pandemic struck, and also during the circuit breaker that was really announced in March, Sayang Sayang Fund actually launched a grant call in February, which enabled our charities to defray unexpected expenses that they will need to incur towards the implementation of preventive and safety measure for the COVID-19 situation. So within weeks, we gave out a total of more than 450,000 to support 51 charities so that their clients could continue to access the essential services and assistance in the community. So we're very pleased that the Sayang Sayang Fund has raised about 8 million to date, and we have kept the movement going because we continue to see interest in the community from donors from all walks of life wanting to do something back to give back to the community. And we thought that given the current dismal situation, it's good for people to be able to find avenues that they could continue to do good at. So the fund remains open until the end of the year, and in September we have raised a total of 8 million, and most of the and we have given out a total of 6 million right now. And on top of this, because of the work that we do with private donors as well as philanthropists, we were also able to engender an additional 2 million to various projects that came through us. Next, please. So the next two slides, I will just share a little bit on the reflections, mostly from CFS's experience via Sayang Sayang Fund, and maybe some of the other philanthropic initiatives that we are aware of. So I think later on, the Chen Yat-sen Foundation will also share a little bit more about how the private philanthropy actually stepped up to fill the gap. So very quickly, I think one of the opportunities for us at that point in time was really the role that we could play to fill immediate resource gap at the community level because of the networks that we have with our partners and our ground experience. So when the pandemic struck, the government really moved into planning, but because the government needed time to sort of put certain measures or initiatives in the works, I think philanthropy could really play a great role by sort of stepping up to fill the gaps first. So a very quick example was the Recess at Home initiative. We launched that within a week from when we first started discussion, and it's a ground-up partnership between the Ministry of Education, CFS, and our donors to provide meal subsidies for needy students during the full home-based learning when circuit breaker was started. So this community-initiated program actually supports the students whose families were impacted, and it provided subsidies so that the students could actually have funds to sort of support their meals at home, right? So looking to the next point on partnering multiplier government agencies like the Agency for Integrated to address sector level efforts and for scale, this is really something that we thought was a wonderful opportunities where we know that they are multiplier government agencies such as the AIC, and in our relationship with AIC in the past, we will be able to sort of come together very quickly to look into how we could support vulnerable seniors who were very much impacted at the beginning of the COVID, especially because of the way the virus was about. So Seniors at Home really reaches out to all the community care providers in Singapore that were providing services to the vulnerable seniors in nursing homes or at home or via community care services. So through the AIC, we were able to reach out to more than 200 community care providers, including some private providers who were then very much under-resourced at that point in time. And we could do this very, very quickly. And if not for this kind of partnership, we won't be able to sort of address some of the needs at the sector level and also for scale. A third opportunity that I thought of is really how we partner the government in order to leverage on their resources. So as the pandemic continues, the Totalization Board in Singapore actually launched an initiative to provide dollar for dollar matching up to 250,000 for ground-up initiative to raise funds And that was very useful for us at Sayang Sayang Fund because CFS was dipping into our reserves to pay for the operational costs as well as the marketing efforts for Sayang Sayang. And this actually helped us to offset some of the manpower costs as well as operational expenses. And for other charities, it provided an impetus where donors could see that if they were to contribute into the community, there were sort of matching grants. And another very interesting example will be the solidarity payment movement. So during the circuit breaker, the government actually announced that all Singaporeans will receive a $600 payout. And I think because of this, we will be able to provide a call for action where Sayang Sayang Fund really benefited. So we had a campaign going on at giving.sg, and on that campaign we actually see quite a lot of people coming on board to say, I wanted to pledge the $600 that I've received towards the marginalized and those who actually need the money more. So some of this kind of leveraging on government resources is really helpful. And I also want to quickly touch on that by resources, I'm not just talking about funds, I'm also looking at non-monetary resources such as data as well as outreach. So last but not least, I think just very quickly on the government accountability towards better performance. I think with philanthropy, we were able to then take the risk first to launch certain initiatives or cover certain gaps that may not be at the forefront of the government priority areas. And I think with philanthropy doing that, there is then an opportunity to sort of help lead the way and subsequently sort of being able to work with the government to bring on some of their initiatives so that they could also address some of these needs. So apart from opportunities, there will also be challenges, and we could move to the next slide, please. Really to think about some of the things that also were barriers that we have to overcome if we want to look towards a successful partnership. So the first and foremost is that even though we were philanthropy organizations and we do have some partnerships with the government, we may have limited information to understand fully the public sector constraints beyond just the immediate needs. So I think beyond just looking at how to address some of the key issues, there were gaps in information, and because we don't operate at the government level, so because of this limited information or understanding, sometimes it will cause people to sort of see things from very different perspectives and points of view, and that could also be a challenge for us if we want to work together. A second point really is the whole idea of philanthropy organizations, our operating models and our thought process are quite different from public sector agencies. For example, public funds or the way they operate may require more accountability, or the way they look at how to address issues is quite different. So if there are divergent operating cultures between how the philanthropy organization is about, then it may cause some stress in terms of how we could work together and also the way we want to collaborate in order to get things going. I have an example of a particular issue we were trying to address at the community level. It was actually very sensitive for the government to do it publicly. So we really have to think through quite differently, how do we change the way we wanted the funds to come in and also how we want to operate the system. And there were certain minefields that we weren't aware of, and we went out with public comms that also have an impact on how the agency wanted things to be messaged. So this is just an example of us having different cultures and how we look at things and how we work at it. I think at some point, because philanthropy comes first and we are a little bit more agile because our funds are from private donors, we are able to move certain things. So as we do this, sometimes there are blurring lines of responsibility of who should be doing what. And if you're unable to land that very quickly and to sort of say the responsibility falls to the other parties, then I think sometimes that could really create a bit of a barrier, and also how we could do certain activities more effectively. Last but not least is really the, I talk about a existing level of trust in the social capital bank. And I think this is something that we sort of built during ordinary times, and it's really very uneven across the board. we put it out to say the government as if it's a single entity, but it's not. So actually, there are various ministries, there are organizations at different levels. So some of whom we have stronger and better relationship. We know the structure, we know the staff, we know how things operate better than the rest. So in terms of that, if we really have an existing level of trust within the organization, certain projects or certain initiatives will move faster, whereas for others, it will take a longer time. And this is not just at the organization or leadership level, but also at the staff and operations. And I feel that during a crisis, we really need to withdraw from the social capital bank, especially at the trust level. And if you really have very high trust between the government officials and also staff at the philanthropic organizations, things could move really, really fast and also enable us to overcome certain challenges that we would not have been able to do so in ordinary times. So coming to my last slide, this is really where I thought the whole entire experience for Sayang Sayang Fund is about. So if we could respond effectively during a time of crisis, and we could only do that because of the strength of the preparedness, the support systems that we have between ourselves, our community partners, the government agencies that we work with, as well as the relationships that we have existed before the crisis, that allow us to leverage on all this and more, so that we could collectively work together in order to address the needs of the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joyce. That's a very insightful presentation. And I have some takeaways, little bit takeaways about how that your initiatives in a short time can raise quite a big number of funds, and then also hide a wide range of initiatives that you support, like for the seniors, for the health workers, or also for the children who is studying from home. I will get back to you later on the question and answer. But now I want to go to the second speaker. So we have Professor Dr. Bambang Sudipyo, the chairman of Basnas, the Indonesian National Zakat Collection Agency, with us. Thank you so much, Dr. Bambang, for making time for this webinar. So Basnas is the official body formed by the government of Indonesia, which has the task and function of collecting and distributing zakat, infak, and alms. And Basnas has played a significant role in efforts to deal with the impact of COVID-19 and have shown their involvement in activities to respond to this pandemic, both in terms of health programs and a socio-economic program. So can you tell us more about this and perhaps also to share with us the lesson learned, Dr. Bambang? Thank you. Over to you.
My video is still off.
Yes, we cannot see you, Pak Bambang.
Okay. Yep. But my video is. Yeah, okay.
Yes, we can see you now, Pak.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Next slide, please. Philanthropy is in Islamic perspective. Yeah. Philanthropy is a very central issue in Islam. Muslims are involved in two kinds of philanthropic relation. There is vertical relation with Allah, or we call it hablum minallah in Arabic, yeah. And also horizontal relations with other humankind, or we call it in Arabic hablum minannas. In hablum minallah, vertical relation, human being is a philanthropic object of Allah, the most generous and the most merciful. While in hablum minannas, the horizontal relation, yeah, every Muslim is supposed to imitate the generosity and mercy of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And then the nature of Islamic philanthropy. There are two kinds of philanthropy. One is the philanthropy which is obligatory in nature. This is what we call zakat. Yeah, zakat is obligatory. There are three kinds of zakat: zakat on assets, zakat on income, and also zakat fitrah during Ramadan. And then philanthropy, which is sunnah. Sunnah means optional but very meritorious, very highly optional, but is highly suggested to be done. And this kind are including infak, sodakoh, korban, akikoh, and awqaf. Next, please. Strategic importance of Islamic philanthropy in Indonesia. Though not an Islamic country by constitution, Indonesia is a country with the largest Muslim citizens in the world. Out of 270 million citizens in 2019, more than 80%, so more than 234.9 million citizens are Muslims. Islamic philanthropy is so central within Islamic teaching and belief. And Indonesia is ranked first in the 2018 World Giving Index by the Charities Aid Foundation. Therefore, the potential size of Islamic philanthropy in Indonesia is very big. The average growth of zakat, infak, and sodakoh collection, or in short, we call it ZIS, yeah, during the period of 2002 up to 2018 was 34.54%. Yeah. When the GDP on the average grew only 4.35%. So the growth, the annual growth of this collection is far way above the average growth of GDP during the same period. Around 65% of this in Indonesia is managed by Basnas, which is government institution, yeah. And we have Basnas at the central government level, and then in each of the 34 provinces level, and also we have 515, yeah, Basnas at the kabupaten level, yeah, kabupaten or city level. And around 35% is managed by Lembaga Amil Zakat, or abbreviated by LAS, yeah, which are a private institution. So not all of the ZIS is managed by Basnas. 35% are managed by private institution, yeah, LAS, yeah, which is given permission by the government. Next, please. Golden opportunity for Indonesian Islamic philanthropy and finance in the 20th century. Geoeconomic center of gravity is now shifting from the West to Asia. Indonesia is within the mainstream of the shift. PricewaterhouseCoopers in 2005 predicted that in the year 2015, Indonesian GDP will be the 6th largest in the world. And then 5 years later, Citibank predicted that in the year 2030, Indonesian GDP will be the 7th largest in the world. In the year 2040, Indonesian GDP will be the 4th largest in the world after China, India, and the United States. And lately, McKinsey in 2012 also predicted in the year 2030, Indonesian GDP will be the 6th largest in the world. So in conclusion, the 21st century, if managed properly, is going to be a golden era for Indonesia, including its Islamic philanthropy and finance. Next, please. This I provide data of how this is used for COVID-19. Yeah. In general, there are three kinds of allocation. One is for health emergency programs, and then the second is for social economic emergency programs, and the third is for continuing the existing programs. This data is from the Central Basnas in Jakarta, not from the whole Basnas in Indonesia, and not including the last allocation by last. But this allocation, this kind of allocation is very typical. Yeah? So we can say that in national levels is almost like this. Yeah? For health emergency, yeah, it was allocated 10 billion point 10.4 49 billion, yeah, with total beneficiaries of 216,559. And then for socio-economic emergency, yeah, 30 billion point 378 rupiah, yeah. And the beneficiaries are 318,864. While for the existing programs is only 1 billion point 87, yeah, rupiah, yeah, with beneficiaries 7,207. So during the COVID pandemic, we allocate only very small portion, yeah, for the continuing of the existing program. For health emergency, we allocated 75% of the total fund. For socio-economic emergency, 71%, while for the existing programs is 4%. This is only by Basnas at the central level. If we count the whole ZIS collection in Indonesia, it is predicted that in 2020, the total ZIS collection is going to be 12.5 trillion rupiah. And therefore, approximately for health emergency will be allocated 2.625 trillion rupiah. For socio-economic emergency, 75%, so it's gonna be 8,875 trillion, yeah. While for the existing programs, only 4%, which is approximately 0.5 trillion rupiah. Yeah, I believe that's all. Yeah, I have presented all of the slide that I prepared. Thank you very much, Pak Muhammad Didi Hardiana.
Thank you so much, Professor Bambang. I think that's also very insightful presentation. Thank you for giving the perspective of Islamic finance and philanthropy, Prof. Bambang. And also, like you showcase about the potential, the huge amount of Islamic finance that can be leveraged, in particular for the COVID-19 response. I think I will also get back to you more on question and answers, Prof. Bambang. But now I would like to go to the next intervention. But before that, I would also like to encourage all the participants to put your question and answer in the question and answer box or chat box. So now we will move on to Jennifer Chen. Chief Executive of the Chen Yat-sen Family Foundation based in Hong Kong. Chen Yat-sen is a hybrid charitable institution with a strategic focus on improving education and a mission to nurture the potential of next generation by building, supporting, and sustaining innovative approach that enhance learning and personal development. Jennifer, your organization create an innovative initiative to support NGOs in Hong Kong to ensure that they can provide services to marginalized individuals during the pandemic. So please guide us through to this initiative, and perhaps you can also share the challenges. Thank you. Over to you, Jennifer.
Hi, thank you so much, Didi, for the introduction, and also to the AVPN team for the invitation to join the panel today, and a great learning experience for me to learn from Joyce and Professor Bang Bang. Thank you so much. The Chen Yat-sen Family Foundation is based in Hong Kong with targeted interventions about grant funding for both parts of mainland China and Hong Kong. In 2020, we had the opportunity to do something outside of our normal giving to respond to the COVID-19 crisis. So if we could move to the next slide, I'd like to share the initiative which we have called it Bridge the Gap HK. There's been much press about COVID-19, and of course everyone in this group is very familiar with the effects of COVID-19 in their everyday lives and in the greater situation around the globe. It's affected every single continent with the exception of Antarctica, so that's quite a significant impact globally, and no one has been spared. In Hong Kong, though, we have found that the double hit of the social unrest that had been already occurring prior to COVID-19's arrival this year had already affected the NGO sector in a negative way. A lot of fundraising occurs in terms of events, and that fundraising goes to unrestricted funding. And by unrestricted funding, quite simply, it's keeping the lights on, running the NGO, running the day-to-day activities, paying salaries, having the lights turned on, and making sure we can continue to service the beneficiaries that each of the NGOs is pledged to do. Without that fundraising, it was very difficult already for the NGOs as we started 2020. And our foundation noted with our grant-making NGO partners that they had already shown the stress of that lack of unrestricted funding. When the COVID-19 pandemic became a very real disruption and continues to be in 2020, we looked for ways that the foundation could step outside of its normal grant making and do something to really provide extra support to our NGOs and to relieve that exceptional, unprecedented stress on their fundraising capabilities. In this slide, I've highlighted an open letter that was written by an amazing group of NGO leaders in Hong Kong, led by a group called Asian Charity Services. And 176 NGOs and their individuals signed an open letter to the government, to the community, asking for extra support, extra understanding and generosity to the NGOs that are serving those in need in Hong Kong. And in terms of the numbers of those in need, we identified of the population of Hong Kong, 7 million. We would say that the NGO sector that serves them are roughly around a 2 million person mark. So that's a significant portion of the Hong Kong population. And the NGOs which are highlighted in this open letter are all non-subvented. In layman speak, that's NGOs that don't actually get additional government support. Government of Hong Kong is very generous and has definitely got subvented NGOs, which they work with by funding and providing premises. But there are a host of other NGOs that do not receive government funding, and they're the ones that, through the Bridge the Gap scheme, we were wanting to find a solution for them to continue their service capacity and to make sure these NGOs, who really are a lifeline of support to the beneficiaries which they serve, could continue to do that despite the lack of fundraising that they were able to do due to the double hit of COVID-19 and the social unrest in Hong Kong. Could I please have the next slide? Thank you. So in terms of our very simple campaign, we wanted to reach out to the Hong Kong community. And when we talk about the community, it's funders and the individual alike. And we wanted to show the solidarity, the collaboration that we could make with the government. In July of this year, the cash payout scheme was announced, where the Hong Kong government made available to every Hong Kong permanent resident over the age of 18 years old, 10,000 Hong Kong dollars, which is roughly $1,500 US. That was going to be free money to every individual who was able to register and qualify for that government payout. We appealed to a section of the community that could afford not to use that 10,000 in terms of spending on themselves, but instead consider donating some or all of that $10,000 to the government, the NGO sector. And by doing that, to provide that much needed unrestricted funding so that the NGOs could continue to do their very, very important work. We wanted, however, to do more than just encourage people to donate. So the Chen Yat-sen Family Foundation put together the Bridge the Gap campaign, which is very simply putting $1 match to a $1 donation. So we particularly wanted to provide comfort to donors because the donors want to know that the NGOs which they're supporting are actually responsible with their funds management and are actually trustworthy in their service delivery. So when giving a nod to that and understanding the due diligence that's required to get to a situation where we would give match funding to a grantee, we selected those NGOs that we already have a relationship with. So we had 5 and we pledged 500,000 Hong Kong dollars per NGO as long as they could also raise $500,000. So that was a 1-to-1 match. In terms of the galvanizing of the success of this, we really wanted to have Hong Kong helping Hong Kong. So if I could ask to move to the next slide, I'll share the messaging that we had in terms of our call to action, which we launched in August of this year. We looked at the funding side, so any private foundations, such as the Chen Yat-sen Family Foundation, our peer group, and also from the corporate sector. Could they see themselves providing match funding in the same way that we had, so that any NGO that they would adopt would be able to receive match funding such that every dollar donated would become $2. We then also did, in terms of our marketing, a pitch to the individuals who were getting the 10,000 Hong Kong dollars. Please go to the Bridge the Gap Hong Kong website. Look for the NGOs that have been vetted, have been approved by our funding group, and donate directly via the website. So we were able to work with the public, work with the funding sector, such that we could boost the NGO sector in Hong Kong to ensure that as much as possible we could maintain that service delivery and provide much needed funding to the NGOs that required no strings attached. And I think that that was highlighted in both Joyce's and Professor Bang Bang's presentations, that this unrestricted funding is unusual for many of the funders out there. But in this unprecedented disruption that we've all experienced this year, we wanted to do something more above and beyond what we would normally do to support our NGO sector. And hence, this is the Bridge the Gap campaign. If we go to the next slide, please. This is a screenshot of our website. We had over 25 NGOs. There's a screenshot of just the top 3 in terms of the space that I could fit. We looked at a range of different sectors that we wanted to support. You've got Animals Asia Foundation here, we've got the Rain Lily Foundation and Bring Me a Book Hong Kong. So in terms of that screenshot, you can see there's the animals are just as important as the humans. We have in the Rain Lily situation, it's the sexual violence against women. So we wanted to be very inclusive of the women and girls. And Bring Me a Book Hong Kong, again, is interventions for the education sector and encourage reading aloud to our very important youth and young children. So this has been a very, very important learning journey for ourselves, for the city of Hong Kong, and getting to the solutions of surviving 2020 and COVID-19. And much like as Joyce intimated, what we could do beyond this is a very, very good question. We'd love to continue to provide some measure of match funding, getting the public to be more aware, more charitable and donating to the NGO sector. And we're hoping that that will continue as we bring more awareness to the everyday donor, as well as to corporates and other foundations, of how they can shift their thinking to provide more to the NGOs, not just in Hong Kong, but everywhere around the globe, to serve those marginalized communities that really need our support. Thank you so much. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for that presentation. I really like your last slide where you showcase some of the NGOs, but not just like the NGOs that like providing services to the vulnerable communities, but also like they are also targeting to support animal, to support also like gender equality and also do education. I think that's very good, and I think your organization really thinking like outside of the box, because like NGOs sometimes are left behind of this pandemic, right? I mean, they must be suffering not just to providing services to the beneficiaries, but also in like to survive their organization. So I think great initiatives, and hopefully that it can be a more success in the future. So speakers and participants, we are going towards the question and answers. Thank you to all that already put your questions and questions in the chat box. I will start with a few questions from us. So first, maybe to Joyce. I also aware that there are plenty of questions that you already answered in the chat box. But if I may ask one thing about where are we seeing the best practice in terms of public, private, and philanthropic partnership? Perhaps you can share us some examples.
Hi, sorry, I was trying to undo the, okay, I can't undo the video button, so if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I think some of the best practices is really the relationships that we have, and also the various schemes that we were able to complement each other. So I feel that when this happens, actually in the day-to-day business that we work, the Community Foundation of Singapore already partner government agencies very much for information as well as data. So we work with them on a regular basis, really in the form of dialogue and exchanges. And that really sort of set the foundation for us in terms of the trust level of how each other operate, and then how we sort of can then know our individual strengths and assets and how to sort of leverage upon that. So to me, one of the best practice is really a sense of constant communication with the various partners that you work with. So for example, in Singapore, we have a movement called SG United, and during the crisis when it happened, the government really took on the heavy lifting to sort of pool the various efforts together and made the effort to share with us internally of some of the situation on the ground or what are some of the initiatives that were happening. So that really enabled us to sort of know where things were at, and also to be able to coordinate our efforts effectively. So if I mention the four sort of national movements, you will notice that our focus areas don't quite overlap, and we try to sort of cover the different areas or gaps in the community or even the agencies that we were funding. CFS was focusing more on charitable organizations, whereas the Stay Strong Fund was really looking at informal community startup group. And all this was sort of done through back-end conversations that we know of with each other, as well as with the government agencies.
Thank you, Joyce, for the answers. I think that's also very helpful for all the participants, either for public or private, how that they can improve or strengthen their partnership with other stakeholders, including the government. I will go to Professor Bambang. Professor Bambang, if I may ask about what makes philanthropic response, in particular from Islamic finance perspective, suit the current pandemic best and important during this crisis, Prof. Bambang. So what values are embedded in this?
Okay, yeah. The funds that are collected by Basnas, yeah, and also LAST Indonesia, yeah, during the pandemic, yeah, is around 96%, yeah, are allocated for those who are the victims, yeah, of the pandemic. Around 25%, yeah, are for health emergency response, and around 71% is for socioeconomic emergency response. Well, for the existing programs, yeah, we allocate only around 4%. Yeah. So it's very small. Yeah. So most of the funds are used, yeah, to fight against the COVID-19. Yeah. That's during the the pandemic. Yeah. Any other question, Pak Didi?
Yes, thank you, Prof. Bambang. So it is interesting to know that, I mean, the organization Basnas tried to swift the focus, right, Pak Bambang, from the original giving to the communities, but now due to the pandemic, you swift the most of the zakat distribution to the COVID pandemic. I think that's also interesting to know how the religious finance really can be leveraged and can be utilized for this kind of crisis. Thank you so much, Prof. Bambang.
Not only zakat, Didi,
yeah,
but also infak and sedekah. Yeah, and that around 20%, yeah, of the fund collected are from infak and also sedekah and other religious fund. Yeah.
Yeah, and
so only about 80% of in the form of zakat. Yeah.
Yes, very well noted, Prof. Bambang. Thank you so much. So my next question will be to Jennifer. I hope you are still here with us. So where do we find philanthropists leading the way in innovation for COVID-19 response, particularly around reaching the marginalized communities?
Great question, thank you. I feel like we have had a lot of innovation that's been thrust upon us, especially in COVID-19. And in terms of the ways that NGOs have had to reposition, redefine their delivery model in reaching their beneficiaries, I think this has been something that all the NGOs that we've worked with, for sure, have had to find out better technology in terms of delivering solutions. With lockdown and with social distancing, if you're trying to meet with your beneficiaries, that's illegal in many situations, whether it be in Hong Kong, whether it be in Indonesia and Singapore, like the circuit breaker that was famously shared in the Singapore situation meant you couldn't leave your house. So how is it that we could get these NGOs to continue to deliver their solutions? And they needed to use technology, the internet, getting into the homes of beneficiaries via an app of some sort, and making sure that those individuals, the beneficiaries, had access to internet, to the hardware. So there's an amazing Hong Kong Talkie Club charitable organization in our city of Hong Kong that was doing exactly that, providing computers, providing bandwidth to those low-income, marginalized families, such that they could access the online learning capabilities that were being offered by schools, or some of the NGOs, such as I mentioned Bring Me a Book. I know because of my association with them, had provided so many innovative online solutions such that those who couldn't get the opportunity to have reading done for them in either English or Chinese could do this via a live reading scenario on a regular basis, and have these readers, or the authors in many cases, come into their homes and have that opportunity. I think that the racial, the cultural, and the economic definition of marginalized community is also something very important to define here. And I wanted to give a nod to the UN Sustainable Development Goals in terms of defining the 17 goals and what it is that we need to do to leave no one behind, which is, I guess, the tagline of the SDGs, and the way that philanthropists have used that as a wonderful guiding light in providing solutions, but checking in with those SDGs to make sure that every part of our solution is as being acknowledged and being inclusive as possible. Because I think that with our Bridge the Gap, we wanted to have fewer conditions. We wanted to reach out to as much as the Hong Kong community as we possibly could, from a realistic point of view, from our own restrictions of governance, etc. And I think the innovation is definitely hand in hand with technology, hand in hand with collaboration with governments wherever possible.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. That's a very great answer. Colleagues, speakers, distinguished speakers, and participants. Yeah, I mean, this is a very interesting discussion today. There are plenty of questions we had in the chat box. Unfortunately, we could not answer one by one due to the interest of time. So I would like to wrap up the discussion with some key takeaways from the discussion. So one of the important things that we can see that how that the philanthropist capital, the power of the philanthropist capitals to support the marginalized groups, the vulnerable people during the pandemic through different ways, either from foundation, either from working with the government, and also from the religious finance that can really be leveraged and can be even optimized more if the collaboration with the other stakeholders, in particular perhaps government, just like what Joyce said about having that no overlapping data, also like the coordination regarding the data, and also the accountability, the outreach of the beneficiaries also important. I think that's also one of the important factors, so that in the futures, also in the recovery period, philanthropists, private sectors, government should work hand in hand in order that the recovery period can be successful and we can get back to the normal situations. So thank you so much to Joyce, Professor Bambang, and also to Jennifer for the insightful and inspiring presentation and a great conversation today. I myself are learning a lot from you. And also to all participants for joining us and the thoughtful questions. As I said that there are some unanswered questions due to the limited time, but later we will review them later and then try to respond. So with that note, I give back the screen to Pat Sian. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Pak Didi, and thank you to our esteemed speakers and the audience who have been very active with your questions. We are very glad today to have had the chance to explore how philanthropy, whether it's coming in the perspective of community foundations, private family foundation, or religious philanthropy, have been a multiplier effect partner to governments and their initiatives to support communities during this crisis. I'd like to also share with everyone that AVPN will be hosting an online workshop with Singapore's National Volunteer and Philanthropy Center about collaborative philanthropy models on the 8th of October in the context of Singapore, where we would like to identify mutual areas of interest for future collaboration among interested stakeholders. Please do join us at the event by registering via the link you see on screen, as well as in the chat box, which will be shared with you momentarily. So in wrapping up, thank you everybody for joining us for this second webinar of a series of 3 that we are conducting in partnership with the UNDP. Our next and final webinar in this series will take place on the 30th of October, where we will be focusing on the topic, investing in the green economy. We'd love to hear from you about your interest to join this upcoming webinar. We will be running a quick poll here on screen for the participants in the room to let us know if you would like to join us at this webinar on the 30th of October as well. Last but not least, we'll also like to invite you to share with us an innovative or collaborative philanthropic initiative that you are currently driving or involved in, particularly in partnership with the government. If you are keen to share this with us, do respond to this poll, and we will also be in touch with you to learn more about your work. If you are not able to answer the poll at the moment, then feel free to drop us a quick message in the chat box with your email address, and we will also be back in touch to learn more about this interesting collaborative initiative you may have going on between philanthropy and policy programs. So thank you everyone for your enthusiastic participation today. The materials and the recording are going to be uploaded on our website, and we are going to be sharing the link on the slide shortly and in the chat box. Please also access the recording there and share this link with your networks. We are very happy to have you online with us today. We hope to see you at the next webinar, and we wish you a very good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Pak Didi. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Pat. See ya. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Joyce.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, thank
very
you
much. Yeah.
again. Have a great day. See you.
Bye-bye.
See you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Assalamualaikum.
much.
Salamat.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, Dr. Bambang.
Okay, I would like to leave, yeah.
Okay, leaving.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. We will be closing the webinar room now. We thank you very much for your participation today. Have a great day.